Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Rosie, this is my husband Jeremy.
Hello.
We spent 11 months last year travelling around Asia. We were backpacking around lots of different countries, and at the end of every country we broke down how much it cost us in terms of 12 different categories like transport, visas, utilities, day outs, food, like eating, all the rest of it. We tracked everything, and at the end of every single country we did a video breaking down the expenses. And so now we're going to break down the whole 11 months traveling. We're talking about flights, we're talking about everything. We're also going to break down all the different countries in terms of which was the most expensive, which was the cheapest, all in Asia. And then at the very end, we're going to break down how much it cost us for 11 months backpacking around Asia. So Jeremy's going to take over because he has been using YNAB, which is You Need a Budget. It's an app, this is not sponsored, it's an app where you basically track all of your expenses, every single transaction that you make. We track it down and kind of categorize it so we know how much we spent on every little thing. He's also got a spreadsheet here on the left and a pie chart. He's one of them. I have no idea, so he's going to take over this video and kind of talk you through all the expenses from 11 months traveling around Southeast Asia.
Alright, so first we're going to start with the countries that we visited, how much we spend per country, so you have an idea of which country is the cheapest and the most expensive. So we went to 7 countries in total. We went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, Malaysia, and Indonesia, just Bali there. So 7 countries. We already did the breakdown of exactly how much we spend per country, per category. Here I'm just going to give you the price, how much we spend per day for the both of us. I don't want to do it individually because, if you pay 30 euro for an accommodation and if it's just one person, it's not 15, you still have to pay for the accommodation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the price per day for both of us, and then I multiply that by 30 so we have an idea of how much a month in this country would cost. The cheapest country we've been to is India, I would say by quite a margin actually. In India we spend a little less than 40 euro per day together.
So this is food out, this is accommodation, this is transport, this is day trips, like boat trips.
This is the average of everything, but yeah, so that includes like obviously an accommodation every night and 2 or 3 meals a day, and then various stuff based on how much we moved and did.
So 40 euros per day for 2 people?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you multiply that by 30 days, that's 1,195. So 1,200 euro basically we spend in a month in India. In average. That's cheap as hell, to be honest. I was expecting India to be cheap, and it proved to be the case.
We ate a lot of street food, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, we try and make it cheap. We obviously don't go to like posh hotels and big restaurants and that kind of thing. We eat a lot of local food, try and stay in cheap, nice accommodation.
Yeah.
That's not bad though.
No, yeah. I mean, we always have the same lifestyle and level of comfort everywhere. So this is where we're comparing the same in each country. So yeah. So yeah, India, 1,200 euro for a month. That's how much it would cost you roughly to live there. Next one is Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, we spend 41 euro per day for both of us. If I multiply that by 30, that would be 1,240. So very close to India. I think the main reason Sri Lanka was cheap also is because we stayed in one place. We booked an Airbnb for 30 days rather than moving around. And that usually makes things much cheaper because especially on Airbnb, if you stay a week, you get like a little, usually 10% discount. But if you stay more than 28 days, you get 30+% discount. That's a good way to reduce your expense when you want to save money, stay longer per places. So that's one of the reasons it's cheaper.
And also we weren't like getting transport in between different places. Like in Vietnam, we moved every 5 days.
Yeah.
So obviously it adds up, whereas there, just one place, you just spend less on
much
transport.
less transportation. So Sri Lanka, I would say, was really like living in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
We were not much tourist. We were going away like, oh, let's go for a day trip today, like you would do, when you live at home and you want to go out on Saturday. But that was the real living there. So Sri Lanka, also like 1,240 euro in a month, so pretty cheap. So those 2 were the cheapest by far. And then we're gonna do a little jump. Next one is gonna be Malaysia, and I'm surprised how cheap Malaysia is. We spend 48 euro per day for the both of us.
Yeah.
Which is a total of 1,450 in a month. So 1,450 for a month in Malaysia. Again, that's an average. We spend 3 months in total there. And the reason I'm surprised is because out of the 7 countries that we visited, after having been in a country, I would have said that I would have expected Malaysia to be more expensive because it's the most Occidental-like country Western country of all the countries we've been to.
Yeah.
Like when you go to Malaysia, you don't feel the culture shock and the, oh my god, this is so different compared to what we European who have also live in the US are used to. In Kuala Lumpur, it's just very normal. In a lot of places, Georgetown was very like normal what we are used to in terms of comfort and in terms of what you need, convenience and everything. So I would have expected this country to be a bit more expensive because of that, because it's more, I don't like the word develop, I don't know what's the right term those days, but I hope you see what I mean. So I'm surprised to see that we spend like less than 1,500 euro in a month in Malaysia, because you have access to everything that you need. Like,
we love
everything.
Malaysia.
Like unlimited sushi, you can get it. When in other country we couldn't. Fix Apple Watch, get prescription glasses. Yeah, like you can live a very normal life. And what I mean by that is a life that we European or maybe American were used to.
Yeah.
So
very comfortable.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Very surprised to see how cheap that was. And it's a stunning country. You can do a lot of things. So
yeah, we loved it there.
Yeah. So really cool to see Malaysia on the podium of the cheapest countries.
On the podium.
Yeah, it is the
you can tell you're a sports guy.
And now it's really close to each other. We have Vietnam. In Vietnam, we spend 54 euro per day, which is 1,620 in a month. 1,620. So there's a jump of pretty much 200 euro here compared to the other one. And it's like 500 euro extra compared to India. So in terms of percentage, it's close to
wow.
It's a good jump.
It's like 50% more.
Yeah. What was expensive in Vietnam was transportation because, we moved a lot.
Yeah.
And because it's a big country, we travel like long distances, like overnight train and stuff like that. And trains were more expensive than they were in India. Like we did also travel overnight in India, but transportation in Vietnam was a little bit more expensive than in other countries. Like in Malaysia, it was cheap as hell. It was buses for like 2 euro, you can travel for 3 hours. When here it was like 100, 120 euro sometimes. So that was the main thing that made Vietnam more expensive on the list. I think if you stay longer in a place and if you reduce distances in the way you travel, you will be able to bring the cost down because food was cheap.
What about day trips and things in Vietnam? Because we did, boat trips.
Yeah, we did a few day trips and stuff like that. Yeah, but they were not really expensive.
Okay.
Like one of the cheapest accommodation we ever stayed in 11 months was in Cat Ba Island.
Oh, that was cheap.
Like that was like nothing. I can't remember now, but it was like so cheap compared to everything else, and it was one of the nicest one. So some things were very cheap in Vietnam. It's a big country. The more you move, the more things are expensive. Basically, that's the rule in general.
It's also when you go somewhere, like in Vietnam, because we went to 5 or 6 different places, you want to see the top 10 things in that 5 or 6 different places, whereas in Sri Lanka we stayed in one place, so then you can see the 10 things in 10 days versus trying to cram it all into 5 days and see everything, and it's just... Some
countries are kind of like cheap to live in, but as soon as you want to move to like tourist mode and visit stuff, that can be pricey.
Yeah.
When some are like, it's a balance. But so 1,620 euro for Vietnam in a month. Next one, we have Indonesia. And I'm going to say Bali because Indonesia could be, I'm sure, very much cheaper if you go to another island. 56 euro per day. So Vietnam was 54. And for a month, 1,680 euro. I'm surprised how cheap that was. Because after being in Bali on the first week, I was like, this is going to cost a fortune. Because Miss here was having smoothie and bowls and stuff like that every day. Smoothies. That was like 4 times the price compared to what we spent before on street food. I was like, this is going to be expensive. And somehow it ended up not being that expensive.
I think if you reined me in, I could have easily spent way more.
Yeah, you could have, but still.
It wasn't too bad.
That's where we did the more excess compared to everywhere else. I think what made it a bit cheaper than I thought it was going to be is because we spent 3 weeks in Ahmed.
Yeah.
And that was cheap. Again, the longer you spend somewhere, the less you spend because you don't move around. Accommodation was fairly cheap. Food was fairly cheaper than in Canggu or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we spent the most amount of time in the cheapest place, which helped. But yeah, we did a few day trips there. We moved around quite a bit. You move around in taxi in Bali. 1,680 euro in Bali. So that I think again. No, I'm surprised. I thought it was going to be more expensive. You can make it 10 times the price very easily. Like you don't need to force to make it more.
I think if you stayed in like a boutique, a bamboo, sustainable, eco lodge hotel with a swimming pool right on the beach, you could probably spend that per night. Like it could
yeah.
be expensive. You could also eat, like we would kind of treat ourselves like every couple of days to a nice salad or a pizza. It wasn't like every single day.
Yeah.
So I think you could for sure make it really expensive.
But that's the same in every country.
Yeah. Well, especially
Everywhere.
Bali though.
Yeah.
I think for...
You can spend $500 per night in every country.
Yeah.
There's always a posh hotel. There's always a Hilton or something.
No, I know, but I feel like, especially in Bali, you could really push it. So I think this is like, obviously we are budget travel. We're not trying to spend a lot of money. So 1,680 is really not bad for a whole month as well. I think people spend that like easily on flights or, you know.
On your weekend vacation.
Yeah.
But that's not vacation, that's living abroad.
Yeah.
That's the way you need to see it. So the last two countries, I'm surprised to see them there because I was expecting them to be actually cheaper. So number 6, we have Thailand. In Thailand, we spend €57.60 per day, which is a total of €1,730 in a month. So all those are very close by like $50 basically every time. But yeah, €1,730 in a month in Thailand. I think it's worth the price, Thailand.
Is that including the flights? Because we flew from...
Oh yeah, within the country, yeah. Oh yeah, within the country,
Yeah,
I thought you mean
okay.
flying to the thing, yeah.
No, because that would have been more than obviously a bus. Like
Yeah.
a bus would have taken probably 2 days,
Yeah.
whereas that was obviously like a couple of hours.
Yeah,
and it
so
would
we
be more
flew
expensive.
within the country. That's pretty much the only time we flew within the country.
Yeah.
From Chiang Mai to Surat Thani.
Yeah.
It was a domestic flight. But also like we took 2 overnight trains and we did a good amount of day trip there.
Yeah, boat trips and
stuff
things
like that. So I would spend all those euro again, especially in Thailand, because it was amazing.
So 1,730 roughly.
Yeah. And then most expensive country, I didn't expect this one to be here, is Cambodia. I thought Cambodia was going to be my 3rd cheapest. I thought it was going to be India, Sri Lanka, and then Cambodia, based on what you usually hear people talk about. So I'm very surprised to find it here. In Cambodia, we spent €58.80 per day for both of us, which is a total of €1,760. It's like €30 more expensive than Thailand. The reason for that, there's 2 things that made Cambodia a little bit the most expensive country. So we didn't move too much. We did 2 weeks in Phnom Penh and 2 weeks in Siem Reap. The 2 weeks in Phnom Penh, the only decent accommodation that I found was on booking.com in this very nice building, and it was much more expensive than usual. Like our average night is €20 a night, and I remember in Phnom Penh it was like 30 or 35.
It was nice though.
So it was honestly like the cheapest nice accommodation that we liked in a good place and stuff like that. So it's fine, but that explained the difference. Like we spend much more for those 2 weeks it's close to twice the price compared to what you usually spend. So that's one of the reasons. And then also when you are around Angkor Wat, you need to take like a day pass to go visit the temple. And we took a 3-day pass, and I think that was like €120 each, just the ticket to go like within the things. So just that, it was like €250 just for 3 days of visiting one place. So like when you spend like 1,500, 600, 700, like $200 is quite a good amount. It's like 12 or 15% of your budget. So it's a big expense in the grand scheme of things. So that's the explanation for Cambodia. That's why it was a bit more expensive. The accommodation in Phnom Penh and tickets for the Angkor Wat complex. But yeah, so...
It's still under 2,000 now.
Yeah, it's still under 2,000, and in the grand scheme of things...
For 2 people for a month.
Yeah, for 2 people, that's the thing. That's the key. It's for 2 people. So you can put it on screen, the recap. But we have India, 1,200. We have Sri Lanka, 1,240. We have Malaysia, 1,450. Vietnam, 1,620. Indonesia, 1,680. Thailand, 1,730. And Cambodia, 1,760. It's not what I expected, to be honest, but it's fun to see it this way, to see display like that.
Okay, so that was breaking down all of the 7 countries that we went to in terms of order. I would have put it on screen so you could kind of see it for yourself. We're now going to talk about, I'm going to pop on screen actually, the total per category and then the total per day per category. So we're not going to talk about every single thing like one by one, but it's on screen now. We're going to break down 2 or 3 of the categories to kind of explain and talk about it just in terms of what you're looking at, basically.
Yeah. So I think the one that is the most revealing, is accommodation, because we all pay either a rent or a mortgage when we live somewhere, so we all know how much it's costing us to have a roof over our head. In 11 months of traveling, we spent €6,300 basically in accommodation. So it's close to 1 year. If I divide that by 11 months, our basically average rent was 570 euro. So I think that's a good way to compare to how much you're paying.
That's crazy.
570 euro a month of rent, basically, if that was one country or whatever.
Yeah.
In Miami, we spend $1,800 a month, so it's like 3 times. In France, when we were renting in the south of France, we're paying between 800 euro, 900 euro, something like that, just to give you an idea. So for like a 1-bedroom place.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, yeah, like in overall accommodation this way was cheaper than any rent that we ever paid since we've been living together.
Yeah.
I think back when I was a student in like Toulouse in 2005, 6, 7, stuff like that. For my studio apartment in Toulouse, I think we're paying 400 euro. I was paying 400 euro a month, and that was like 20 years ago, and it was a studio.
And it was the size of this bedroom.
Yeah. So by now it's probably like much more expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. That is very cheap. That's much cheaper than I thought it would be, to be honest.
Yeah.
If I had to make a guess before going traveling.
I mean, 6,000 for a year of accommodation.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, we stayed in a tent in Sri Lanka. We stayed in a nice apartment in Phnom Penh with a rooftop swimming pool. We stayed in little boutique hotels, Airbnbs. We stayed with people, in Langkawi. We stayed on the beach in Koh Lanta in Thailand. Like loads of different it's
awesome
not,
places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
cool
awesome
to see. Yeah. Okay, so the second category I want to highlight is actually 2 categories together, is eating out and groceries. Eating out is most of the money that we spend, as you can see, because we didn't cook much at all. We've been eating out a lot because we felt it was just cheaper to eat out than to cook ourselves.
And easier and delicious. Yeah. You'd have to do dishes and all the rest of it.
Like the only grocery that we did was buying fruits and snacks when we were traveling and stuff like that.
Yeah, like crisps and chocolates.
Yeah, or like a drink, but it wasn't very like food. If I add the eating out and grocery, that's like 4,300 euro. If I divide that by 11, basically in anything that we ate and drank, we spend an average of 400 euro a month. That could sound like a lot. I'm sure if you cook every day at home, you're going to spend less than that.
400 a month, you think?
Yeah, in France we spend less than that.
Okay.
If you go to the market and you buy, grocery stuff. But that's eating at the restaurant every day.
Yeah,
like that's the main thing, like twice a day. Like you don't have to fuss with food shopping, doing grocery, doing your dishes and all those stuff. So that has to be included in the price. There's a comfort of eating out every day.
Yeah. But I also think 400 euros, we spent way more than that in Miami.
Yeah, it really depends where you live. Yeah, in Miami, we spend between $600 and $800 a month
just
in food.
On groceries, right? Not even eating out.
Yeah.
And we'd eat out maybe once or twice.
Yeah, we couldn't.
Couldn't afford it.
But in France, I would say we spend less than that. In France, we must have spent more like 250 or 300 euro.
But also in France, that was 6 years ago or something. We haven't lived there for a while.
True.
Like
the price probably. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
We haven't lived in France since.
Yeah, 2017. So that's a good point actually. Yeah. So it's probably close. So.
I think 400 is really cheap. I think a lot of people. It's so hard because there's people from all around the world probably watching this video.
Yeah.
You could spend that in a day, or you could spend that in like 2 months. Probably some people, I don't know, or maybe longer. I don't. It's really hard to compare. But for us in France, we spent about 300 a month.
Yeah.
This was 6 years ago. In Miami, we spent about 800 a month, and that was 2 or 3 years ago. Obviously, Miami prices. So. It's hard to compare, but obviously you might know your own finances if you don't use YNAB, because it is really good to figure out how much you spend on things. But 400 a month is not bad for eating out twice a day.
I wanted to highlight those two because everyone has a roof usually and everyone needs to eat. So those two are the most, I think, relatable expenses that we can talk about. Everything else, like transportation and visit and stuff like that, you can visit more, you can visit less, and it means nothing. You can fly between places or then take bus or you can take private taxis. So those two are the most relatable ones, I think.
Private taxis. You could also do private jets. You could
you can do anything that you want.
I think transport though, 1,900 in a year is not bad. And then also visits 1,400. So 1,400, and bear in mind this is like a boat trip around Halong Bay in Vietnam. This is a boat trip to islands in Thailand.
It's like 110 euro a month in visit. Yeah, it's not much.
It's like a water park in Langkawi. It's like so many fun different things that we did.
No, for sure. For everything that we've seen.
Like looking at so many temples and palaces in India and the forts and like there's just so much in there that we did. For 1,500 is nothing. 400 even.
For sure.
So we've broken down all of the different expenses. You'll have seen that on screen as well to kind of have a look and figure out how that compares to yours. We're now going to talk about the total for 11 months traveling around Southeast Asia. We're also going to talk about the total per day, and then we're going to add a couple more things in there that we didn't really mention.
Yeah. For the traveling itself, we have spent in 11 months 16,200 euro for those 11 months, which is insanely cheap. Like, I thought it was going to be much more than that. People say usually, I think, to travel for 1 year it takes about 15k, but I think it's like per person, no?
I don't
know. I feel like
that.
when you read blog post or whatever, it's like, yeah, you can travel on your own for like 15k for 1 year. I don't know. So I think that's crazy cheap. So yeah, all those categories that were listed on the screen, if you add it up, it's 16,200 euro total for 11 months, which is basically an average of 50 euro a day for the both of us. So for 50 euro a day for a couple who wants to live comfortably enough but not in a luxury, you can make it. However, this doesn't include two things, because I don't know, I didn't know how to include it because we didn't know it. So that doesn't include flights and also 2 weeks that we did in Australia to, in the middle of that, to see a friend.
Yeah, so we went to Australia because our friend got married, and also we met in Australia 14 years ago this year.
Yeah.
So we wanted to go and kind of see where we'd lived, like where we had a first kiss, where we used to go out, we used to go walking and things like that. So it was really like, it was definitely a little bit of luxury in with the like Southeast Asia travel. So obviously not everyone's going to be doing that in like 2 weeks in Australia that we did. So it was quite expensive.
That's why I extracted it, because it's not relevant in a grand total if you're watching this video to know how much it would cost you. And also I didn't include the main flights, because depending on where you're from and stuff like that, like, and some flight one. So in Australia, like, so that was going from Bangkok to Australia. We spent 2 weeks in Australia, and then we flew to Sri Lanka. That 2 weeks with those two flights and a flight between Melbourne and Sydney cost us 3,200 euro. So in 11 months, we spent 16k, and we spent 3 in just 2 weeks going to Australia. That's why I didn't want to include it, because it would have kind of screw up everything in a way and make it everything more expensive.
That's like 2 months in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks in
2 weeks
Australia.
It's crazy. It's 2 months everywhere, basically.
I mean, I'm glad we did it.
No, yeah, for sure. But it's funny to see.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny to see the cost of like country we used to, like, you know, like that's Miami price, like that shit, stuff like that. It is crazy, yeah. And then I also want to add some flights. We flew from Sri Lanka to India. We also flew from India to Malaysia, and Malaysia to Bali. And obviously we started our trip in England. We flew from London to Vietnam, and then we flew back from Bali to London.
Just a quick thing. So, but in between Vietnam, Cambodia and Thailand, we took overnight trains or buses.
Or buses, yeah.
So that's why there's no flights in that area. And then also, like Jeremy said, we flew home, but we had to, my grandma was in hospital and unwell, so we booked flights like that day and flew home that day. So the flight was like 2,000 or something.
2,300, yeah.
For both of us to fly home like the same day. So that's really expensive. Most people won't have to do. They'll book it for like 2 months in advance, and it'll be a lot cheaper.
Yeah. So we spent 16,200 living in Asia and moving around country by like bus or stuff like that. We did a little interruption to fly to Australia and come back. That was 3k. And then all those initial flights and a couple of mid-flight and leaving, that was 4,400. But yeah, it could have been cheaper by planning, because the last minute ticket was half of that. If we put everything together, how much did we spend in 11 months, starting in England, finishing in England, and going through 7 countries in Asia plus 2 weeks in Australia? The grand total is 23,800 euro. When we talk to people, it's like, I can't afford to travel. I can't afford to do that. It's like, I'm pretty sure you're spending more than that. It depends obviously where you live.
Depends where you live and your income and all the rest of it.
In Miami, our rent was 21,000 per year.
Yeah.
So just to have a roof, that's how much we paid in Miami, pretty much. It's very close to what we paid in France 7 years ago. So now with inflation, it's for sure much more. And that was to live a boring life.
Yeah.
Being in one place all the time, going to work from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
We were both
not going anywhere, doing like a couple of day trip here and there, but
we were both working full time, trying to just keep the roof over our head, trying to just pay the mortgage, trying to just, see friends and do something once a month maybe if it's not that expensive.
And I go
this
for
was
a
not
weekend,
like living our best life.
Yeah,
at
that
all.
wasn't thriving.
No.
So for the same amount of money, and probably less by now because of 7 years of inflation, for like less than 24k,
We had the
you
year
know,
of a
we
lifetime.
spent 1 year traveling in Asia and going to Australia and stuff like that. Like, and basically, like without Australia and without the last minute flight, it would have been closer to like 21k. 24k for pretty much 1 year,
Yeah.
you know, like that's 12,000 per person.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 a month, basically. Like if you average everything, we spend 2,000 a month
Yeah.
traveling around
Yeah.
for both of us. Like I think that proved that debunks the whole thing that if you're not traveling because you can't afford it, obviously it depends where you live and what's your situation, but a lot of people use this excuse, but it's BS. And I'm not saying it's the case for everyone, because obviously every situation is different, but I've heard many people that make the same amount of money that we make or even more that say that, and it's like, dude, like you can do it if you want to.
I think
Totally.
a couple of things, if you do want to do this and you're also on a budget like us, don't have a mortgage or something back at home, because if you're paying, you know, 800 mortgage plus this, that'd obviously like double the cost of everything. So we sold the apartment that we had, we cancelled any rent that we had, we sold a lot of things as well, so we don't have much at home. And then the other thing is to try and find a job online. So we both work, and I know it looks like we're like swanning around the world just living our best life, which we are, but we do also spend time in cafes working and, you know, trying to finance this whole thing. Like every month we are still working, trying to keep affording what we're doing, even though it's probably less expensive than living in Europe. So try and find an online job as well, so you're not just like relying on a certain amount of savings that you have, I would say, because I think once you start doing this, it's quite addictive, and it's also something you don't really want to stop. Well, we don't really want to stop. We don't want to stop. So I think trying to find an online job, something you can do where, you know, if you can earn 1,000 each, if there's two people, so that's 2,000, you can definitely travel for 2,000 a month and probably save a couple hundred each month as well. If you can save, obviously if you can earn more than that, you can save more than that, or you can spend more as well. But this is definitely like living in nice-ish accommodation. It's not posh hotels, but it's good, it's fine. Internet worked, it was quiet, we slept well, eating out twice a day, doing day trips that like are incredible, once in a lifetime opportunities, meeting people along the way that were incredible, just having the best year ever for 24,000, which is crazy.
And you can make it cheaper, honestly, if you want to. Like if you're really, really tired, like,
we didn't stay in hostels.
Hostel, you can save a lot of money on that.
Don't fly to Australia.
It's a good way to debunk the myth of like traveling is expensive. It doesn't have to be.
Actually,
like you can make it very expensive, but it doesn't have to be. And
I've got an exercise for you. If you don't use YNAB, for the next month, track how much you spend on food, accommodation, travel, if you have to travel to work and things like that, any day trips you do, any kind of nights out that you have with friends, or any...
And then all the tax and the car, the fuel, the insurance, all those stuff that you pay.
Laundry, things like that, or just everything that you pay for a month, jot it down and figure out, maybe first of all, things you can cut out that you don't necessarily need. So you can save that little bit extra money if you do want to go travelling. And then the other thing is just figure out how much it costs, and if living that life is actually what you want to be doing, or if you want to sack it all off and do what we've done. Because honestly, if you've got 2,000 a month, two people could travel around Southeast Asia for a year.
Yeah.
Easy.
And I would say that for one person, it's probably like 1,200. It's not half, because again, accommodation is accommodation. But we leave the link for YNAB in the description. It's not sponsored. I just love them.
Jamie loves them. He needs to get a job with them or something.
But
yeah, hope you enjoyed this one. We are currently in Mexico. We're going to be traveling around Central and South America this year, hopefully for the whole year. So we are going to be tracking our expenses again using YNAB, still not sponsored. But we're going to be talking about the expenses at the end of every place we visit, and also probably at the end of the year as well, if you want to watch that. We have broken down all the expenses for all these countries we've talked about at the end of every travel. I've vlogged the whole thing as well. So there's honestly loads of videos, hundreds of videos from last year of vlogs, like travel vlogs, things you must see and do, day in life of a digital nomad, all these different things, plus a breakdown of each country, plus the breakdown of the price of each country. So if you want to go and watch any of that, go ahead. There is so much to watch, but I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you very soon.
Bye.
Bye.